Tom, you've had a cross-country winner for your brother. You've won the Ladbrokes Trophy again. How would you sum up 2020 for you so far?
So far this season, it's been okay. I wouldn't have had maybe the volume of winners I'd have liked by this stage, but it's been made up with the quality.
Do those winners, does it sort of negate the fact that you haven't had those numerical numbers when you look back and you go, right, big winners are done at the start of the season, happy day?
Yeah, you want to ride as many winners as possible. Makes the bank manager a little bit happier if they're bigger winners. But you just try and ride as many winners as possible. It doesn't, for me, obviously it's a great thrill riding the big winners, and it's the way it's worked out this season. But I'm in a very lucky position, and yes, I suppose the quantity hasn't been quite there as in normal season, shall we say, but the quality's been better than ever, so I've got no reason to complain at all.
And approaching what is a really busy time of year for jockeys and the National Hunt game, the Christmas period, whereas before, a few years ago, you were probably going to Kempton knowing you were riding Thistlecrack in a King George. This year, is it trying to pick up as many opportunities as you can in and around the big races?
Yes, I suppose the way it's sort of worked out is that I've been able with my agent Dave Roberts to pinpoint the weekends and look for the good rides. So at this stage, I don't know where I'll be going over the Christmas period. There's nothing ones you can sort of pinpoint to and say, I'll be riding that or doing that. But there's plenty of fires in the oven, and I'll be there. I just don't know what I'll be riding yet.
I know at this time of year, jockeys probably get asked it a lot, but you've got a young family, so what does Christmas Day and the lead up to Christmas entail for you as a jockey?
It's still, I suppose, because with the kids around, it still has that sort of magic with it. But it's the same as it's always been. I prefer the 23rd and 24th. I can let my hair down a little bit, especially probably the night of the 23rd. I might let my hair down a bit. But come the 24th, 25th, especially if you've got a good ride on Boxing Day, your mind tends to wander off. And once you've got through is probably the wrong word, but Christmas morning's come and everyone's had their presents, and everyone's sitting down to lunch, you do find your mind wandering to how you're going to approach the next day. So it becomes, you have a couple of days off, but your mind is never very far from what's happening. And
you've been riding for a number of years now. Are you able to switch off when you need to switch off and switch on when you need to switch on, or do you find that hard still? I'm
probably the one that is not in the position to answer that. I'd like to think so, and I would say yes, but then I do find myself, suddenly I'll be sat down and I think I'll be zoned in a conversation. Suddenly it's Thomas, are you listening to me? So
3 words.
So,
it's a film.
Yes, exactly. So I'll tend to sort of enclose myself off, but it does. I think it does get easier as you get older, and it especially gets easier with the family around. That you can see what the girls are doing, what Sarah's doing. So I think with the experience you do learn to switch yourself on and off. A little bit more. That's certainly what I'd like to say anyway. Whether it's the truth or not is
we'll
another
ask the
thing.
girls and Sarah.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you remember the Thistlecrack? Obviously, you remember the Thistlecrack Christmas, but do you remember how you felt going into Boxing Day that year?
I remember feeling very confident. I remember I was very clear in my mind what I wanted to do on him, and he'd only had 3 runs over fences by that stage. He won round Chepstow, which was, all 3 were very impressive, but he was good around Chepstow, not so good around Cheltenham. He scared himself at one of the first ditches and didn't jump as well, and then round Newbury was electric. I remember thinking at the time, we'll probably go down the Feltham route, but Colin and John Snook were pretty adamant we should go on for the King George. I've also got to remember Colin had Q Card at the same time that was favourite, and it's great credit to Colin and Joe that they were able to keep that side of things. That was never an issue, that well, we've got a cue card for that, and we've got Thistlecrack for this. You know, the way they sort of campaign their horses is very much, we will do the best for each individual one. And so in the lead up, I remember having the conversation with Joe, Colin and John about it, and I think I probably said we should go for the Feltham, but John and Colin went for the King George, and fortune favoured the brave. But on the lead up all the way through, I remember watching the videos of King George's gone by, just to get myself used to the pace of the races and how they unfold and the positions you wanted to be in. And I was very clear with how I wanted to ride Thistlecrack and what I wanted to do. And
did it all go according to plan?
Yeah, it did. It did. I wasn't expecting Paddy to take me on when he did, but that was only because of the pressure that Thistlecrack had put him under. He had to sort of play his card there and then, but which was great credit to Thistlecrack that he was able to do that to the others, that I was able to take them places where they didn't want to go, and that's what good horses do.
Was that the best moment of your career?
I suppose. Well, he's been the best horse I've ridden. The best moment of my career so far has definitely been Next Sensation winning the Grand for my brother. Yeah. Just because of the family situation. My brother trained it. It was owned by some great family friends. You know, the people that owned it, the Blanfords. Mark Blanford's father was one of my grandfather's best friends, Roy Blanford. So they were sort of the three generations had all grown up together. So that was very special. That things like that don't happen. So that was probably emotionally and it's given me the most sort of satisfaction. But to win a King George, win a jump racing's classic races was a great thrill, and I'd like to do it again.
I'm sure you'll get plenty of opportunities to do it again. When you look at your career, obviously, I'm mindful to say elder statesman of the weighing room, because yeah. I know that some jockeys don't like that.
I've crept into the top 10 now. I've crept into the top 10 of elder jockeys. I'm hoping.
But you're not an old man.
I'm hoping Davey makes a swift recovery from injury, and Dickie keeps going a bit longer, and Puppy continues to go well. Will Kennedy, Paddy Brennan, and I think then me. Mark Grant, he's older. So yeah, they're. I was disappointed to see Leighton Aspel retire last year, because I think that was I crept into the top 10 with that. But yeah, there's no getting away from it. I'm got more years behind me than in front of me these days, but I still feel fit, healthy, and enjoying it. As long as that happens, we'll keep on pushing and kicking.
I watched a Channel 4 piece of you at school ahead of your first Cheltenham.
Wasn't in black and white.
Not quite. If someone said to that schoolboy, as it was then, ahead of your first Cheltenham, that in however many years, 15 years time or whatever it was, that you would have ridden 1,350 winners, King George, ridden a Cheltenham winner for your brother, what would you have said to Tom Scudamore at 18?
I'd have been disappointed. That's just the way it's been. Expect is too strong a word, but I was always very clear with what I wanted to do and how I was going to do it, and I was going to make sure that I could do it to the best of my abilities. Nobody's guaranteed anything, and I'm very proud of what I've achieved, but it certainly at no point do you feel fulfilled by what you've done. It's been and gone, and you're straight on to the next one. So even at
do you not feel fulfilled in any way?
No.
Really?
No. You just.
Why do you think that is?
Because
the mindset of a sportsman.
Yeah, you just want to move. They've got, and I suppose that's also the way you have to be, because you get too carried away. You've got to concentrate on the next ride, and I'm in a lucky position that generally, if I have a big winner, half an hour later, I'm in the next race. So you just, it's been and gone. Next one is the most important now.
When you started out, did you feel like you had pressure on your shoulders because of the boots that you were filling, both from your father, Peter, and your grandfather, Michael?
No. I never felt that. The great joy of being in the family was the fact that I got all his old boots and stuff, so that saved me a few quid to begin with. So that was great. I didn't have to buy any gear when I first started riding because I used all my old man stuff. So, but no, I never felt that I had anything to live up to with Dad or Grandad. I was extremely proud, and still am extremely proud of what they've done and what they've achieved. But I'm not competing against them. So from that point of view, I never felt that I've got to live up to the family name, as it were. There are moments, I suppose, that you feel, yes, I've done that I can not be on a par with them, because you're never looking for that, but you can be treated more or less as an equal, from what, so Grandad won the Gold Cup and Grand National, Dad was champion jockey so many times, and there's certain milestones in your career that you look at and you think, yeah, it's when I rode as many winners as my grandfather, I rode 1,000 winners, or rode a few festival winners and things, you sort of, then you sort of think, yeah, I'm not letting the side down in that respect. But there's never a moment when you're going through it or thinking, this is what I have to live up to. I never had any expectations of that.
How do you think your riding's changed from when you started out to where you are now? The game, I think it's fair to say, has probably become a bit more professional, but how do you as a jockey think you've changed?
I'd like to think that I've got better with each passing day and passing week and month and year. That's the way I always look at it, is that every day you get up and you want to improve, you want to be better. So if I look back at videos of myself from, especially at the beginning of my career to now, I mean, I'd be embarrassed by what I'd probably rode like at the beginning of my career. There are certain aspects of my riding that, without going into too much detail, that I feel that I've improved on. But I suppose it's the same as a batsman or a bowler or a rugby player. There's, at the beginning of your career, you might have a few technical issues that you've got to iron out. Unfortunately, with racing, they generally get flattened out, right? As you pick yourself up, having been rolled upon, that you're thinking, that's a little technical issue there. I've really got to iron out. So, when at the beginning of my career, and lots of jockeys have it, I had an issue with the last fence that I would go down and I'd be indecisive. I would do something completely different at the last fence, what I did at whether the 7 obstacles before or however many, depending on the race. I'd go down, and at the last minute I'd change my mind. My hands would come up, my hands would be in the wrong position, and because of that, the horse would generally make a mistake at the last. And that was happening a lot when I had just lost my claim. I was sort of 18, 19 at the time. So from 18, I suppose, through to 21, I was really trying to iron out this little technical issue. And it happens an awful lot with jockeys. So that's just one example, but there are certain things all the way through that you'll be thinking, yes, I've got to improve this, I've got to improve that.
Is that because the winning post is in sight and you're almost forcing it? Or
maybe sometimes it's just okay, I've got to get over it, and everything else goes out the window, and you end up doing something completely different to what you've done at all the other ones. It's the same way, I suppose, as if you get to certain batsmen that get to make a lovely 20 or 30, and then for some inexplicable reason waft at one just outside off stump that they've left for the last half an hour, and they suddenly decide they're going to go and try and then nick off, and everyone's applauding them for making a lovely 20 or 30, and it gets them nowhere. So you've got to adapt and change, and that was just one of the things that I did at an early stage of my career. And there's things, yes, you're always trying to work on and trying to do differently. But yeah, I'd like to think that same as everybody else. If you don't get better, you've got no chance. It doesn't matter who you are.
How proud are you of the sort of loyalty shown both sides of the fence and the association you've had throughout your career with David Pipe?
I'm very proud of riding for David and Pond House. I rode from when he first started point-to-point training. I was a point-to-point rider. So we've been, working together for 20 years now. I mean, it's a long, long time. It's never felt like anything out of loyalty. It's I've enjoyed working for him. I've ridden a lot of winners for him, and I'd like to think I'll continue to ride a lot of winners for him. So we get on well, and it's something that I've always enjoyed. Yes, same with any relationship, you have your ups and downs, but I can genuinely count on one hand the amount of times we've had words, and that's pretty.
In this game,
yeah,
pretty
and
remarkable.
well, in any walk of life,
Yeah.
Is pretty remarkable, and when those words have happened, they generally needed to be said. So I've got a lot of respect for him, and I've always enjoyed working for him. And look, the same with any relationship. There's been their moments. There's been times when I've not achieved the things I wanted to achieve, and there's been times when David will say the same thing. But we're always working together, always trying to get better, and at the end of the day, our results speak for themselves. We've had a lot of success.
How do you, as an athlete, sportsman, in a really competitive game, how do you deal with disappointment and the mental side of the job? Because that's something that I don't think you and your peers would discuss too much in front of an audience. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of the sides of the job that people take for granted probably, but it must be tough.
It is. I mean, there's okay. So last weekend I chose to ride the wrong horse in the Beecher Chase. I rode Ramsey's Ate instead of Violi en Rouge. If that decision was again in the same time tomorrow, I'd make the same decision again, because Ramsey's Ate was a shorter price than Violi en, and you have to be completely committed, as it were, and to that. So when Vieux won and I'm out the back watching him win, at that time you man up, you grow a pair of balls and say well done to everybody, and you had the decision, you've got it wrong, move on. There are times when maybe the worst ones I find is when you've ridden a horse in the past and for whatever reason somebody has dispensed with your services, or they didn't want you for that race and you've ended up having to ride something else. And they're the ones that I find really hard, and they're the ones where you just want to be in a dark corner, and then that's that. The other disappointments, I suppose, if you lose a race you should have won, yes, obviously you get cross with yourself. Yes, it might take you a bit of time to get over it, but at the same time, you've got to be responsible for your own actions. So if you've made a mistake, if something's gone wrong, then you just can't allow that to happen again. And I suppose it's a case of you've got to park it. All the negative thoughts have got to, they've happened. It's the same way we were talking about earlier with success. If you're too much thinking, God, wasn't that brilliant winning the big race last week, and you're still thinking about that a week later, the disappointments are also going to stay with you as well. So I try and do the same thing. And again, whether people around me will say that, they judge better than me, but that's the way I try and work it, is if I do have a disappointment, I try and park it as best I can. It's gone. Yes, there are times when something might stay with you for a bit, and riding the wrong horse. When I was younger, 2002, I could have ridden Bindery in the Grand National, and I rode Smarty, and that stayed with me a long, long time.
How long?
That's years and years and years.
Really?
Yeah. But I made the decision at the time, and that was right. I think, yeah, so if it happened again this season, God forbid it doesn't, I think I'd be in a better place to deal with it. But then it did have a detrimental effect on my riding for the next few years. So
few years?
Yeah, definitely, because I was thinking about, if I'd ridden it, I would have then ridden something else, and I'd have been more fashionable for this or more fashionable for that. And it's nonsense. You've just got to say, it's been, gone, happened, get on with it. That's generally been my attitude for the last however long, and I felt that's served me a lot better.
There's a saying where people go on man up and stuff, which I don't really like as a saying. But do you think people are more open, like the jockeys that you sit in and around, when something is going bad, are people more likely to say, I'm having a tough time, or this or that, or is it still that slight culture in the weighing room of being like, no, we've got to act and look tough here, and can't let it show? And
that's a good question, because you try and look after each other, and there'll be incidents where the valets are very good at it. They'll say to me, "Scoot, keep an eye on so and so. He seems a bit down at the moment." So you just keep an eye on them. You making sure that they'll be all right. And they're, I suppose, being one of the senior members of the weighing room, you do have that sort of responsibility, whether it's myself or Dickie or somebody else, that you like to you just keep a little eye on them, that you make sure that you're okay. Is everything else all right? But you've also got to weigh that up, that there is no way of getting around it, and there's no way of dressing things up that it is a competitive sport, and the nature of competition is, I'm afraid, people will win and people will lose. And yes, man up is the wrong word, but you have to deal with that. No matter how successful you are going to ride more losers than you ride winners. That is a fact of life. And there are occasions where you have to park things and move on. And if there are, you never know what's going on with other people. If they could be under stress for all sorts of reasons, and you have to be aware. And the weighing room is a really close-knit, good community and environment generally for that. And I know we've had sad times recently. I was great mates with Liam Treadwell, and we had the James Banks, and those were really, really tough times, and everybody felt it. And they were really solid, lovely people. And we knew they had their issues and things, and everybody, you look back and through things, and could we have done this differently? Could we have done that differently? And I don't know what the answer is. But going back to the sort of thing with racing, is that you, at the same time with all the other things going on, it is a competitive sport, and you have to balance everything up. And at the end of the day, let's say, you've got to deal with triumph and disaster, and treat those two imposters just the same.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The focus that those tragedies have put on people's mental health, etc. If there is to be a glimmer of light out of those tragedies, it's hopefully that people are more aware and willing to talk, etc.
There are things in place, and we do have a good support network for the jockeys. And I'm not saying it can't get better, because of course everything can get better. But during my career, that's probably been the biggest change, is the support network for jockeys. We're treated much more like athletes now than we were at the beginning of my career, and certainly since Dad's day and even Grandfather's day. I mean, when Grandad was riding, there were trainers he'd ride for he wasn't allowed in the house with, because that was the way it was. You were basically a servant.
Like hierarchical.
Yeah, but that's the way things were.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's the way things were back then. We've evolved. But they were also riding in 40-runner fields with wooden wings, with horse. But he was also riding with people that had just come back from Japanese prisoner of war camps. Dave Dick spent 3 years in a Japanese prison, so their idea of danger was very different to you and I. So whether you're having Grandad trying to tell somebody who didn't fight in the war, Grandad, his father did, but he didn't. Trying to turn around and say, "Well, Dave, the fences around Plumpton are a little bit stiff," and they turn around and say, "Well, I was shot at by a Japanese sniper," or Dick Francis was I think he was a fighter pilot, or certainly in the air division. So their danger, their elements of danger are very different, and things evolve, things change. But in my career, the one thing I'm very grateful for, the support networks around jockeys, whether it's through rehabilitation, through injury with the Oaksey House, Jack Berry House, Peter O'Sullivan House, or what we've discussed with mental health, there are people to go and talk there. There are networks out there to go and help you. But the same with any walk of life, you've got to want that help.
You must have had some unbelievable Christmas Day conversations with your family, your grandfather, your dad. Would you sit around as a young boy and sort of get Grandad to regale stories of when he was riding?
I find myself morphing more into them. I'm probably boring you senseless with them
Slippers
all,
on.
saying, slippers on. I'm not quite as forgetful as my grandfather was, but he was a brilliant man. He was just, I was talking about it with Dad again the other day, is that there are certain things in life, that maybe didn't excel at. Certainly financially, he wasn't very
Was he
good.
bad with money?
Terrible with money. But at the same time, he had lots of credit in the bank through other things, and people loved to look after him because he was such a wonderful man, greatly respected. And as a kid growing up, I was aware of how much respect he had. So I'd go racing with Grandad to Cheltenham or somewhere, and you'd bump into Pat Taff or Terry Biddlecombe or Jeff King or Josh Gifford, people that were gods of the sport. And the respect they had for Grandad, but as a man and as a jockey, was phenomenal. I remember when just after Grandad died, I went to ride at Wetherby, and Jerry Scott came and sat with me, and he won the Grand National on Merriman in 1960, and he told me he used to go down to the last fence when Grandad was riding, just so he could watch him ride, how he rode the last fence. It's coming from someone like Jerry Scott, and you're thinking, God, so that's the time you really do get, quite emotional and feel, 5'7" turns into 6'2", that you think, crikey, that was my grandfather, and it's the same with Dad. But yeah, we used to sit around, talk, and I used to love hearing the stories from Grandad and Dad about the times, what they got up to and what they did is just,
Do you kind of wish it was like that for you now?
No, because they were, in Grandad's era, I talk about Grandad not being very good financially. None of them were good financially. It was they were treated racing as a sport you do for a bit. So they were because
a bit Corinthian.
Yeah, and it was through no way, but I suppose that any sport at that stage was treated like that. That it wasn't, and they'd try and make a few quid and buy a farm, and then they'd retire. What they'd do after racing, then they wouldn't have a clue.
Worry about it then.
Well, yeah, worry about it then and stuff. So you think of them all, every single one of them, for what all they achieved and things, they had very little to show for it at the end. And then John Frankham came along and changed everything. I mean, he was probably to jockeys what Martin Pipe was to training a racehorse.
Do you think he was the single biggest catalyst to change?
Yeah, and Dad said when he went into the weighing room, all he wanted to be, whether the way he conducted himself, the way he rode, But Dad said would have this devil-may-care attitude, but was so ridiculously single-minded at the same time. He changed everything. The way jockeys looked after themselves. He didn't drink or smoke, which, when he started, going, in 1970, beginning of the 70s, you had Terry Biddlecombe, Josh Gifford all still riding that would drink on the way to the races. To suddenly this young curly-haired young man came in 1974 and didn't touch a drop, didn't smoke.
And he was good with, do you know what I mean? He backed out by
and he was suddenly he changed everything. And suddenly he became the standard. Dad became the standard. Dunwoody became the standard. AP, and now it's Dickie. But John, the way everything, the way people looked after their money, he'd give people advice about it, and he revolutionised the way I suppose was jockeys. And then he's played a massive part in you say the networks that we talk about now. How many of them is John a patron of?
He's given a lot back.
He has given a hell of a lot back. So he hearing stories about him but he got up to an awful lot. That's for sure.
We'll save that for the post-watershed version of this. But you heard what it was like in your grandfather's day. Your dad was riding around with the likes of John, who changed the game. You were around when AP was achieving what he did. Do you worry about where racing's heading? There's a lot of layers to that, I know. But when you look at it in the future, do you think, I'm not liking how it looks in the future?
If you'd asked me, it evolves so quickly. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I'd have actually probably been more worried about the state of racing 6 months ago, pre-COVID, with a certain few things. Now, since COVID has come in, yes, everyone has their worries and things, but it's the same with any business. I actually think racing has done itself in many ways a lot of favours. And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but and then the proof will be in the pudding. But ITV, terrestrial television, are showing 3 days a week at the moment. I mean, how many other sports can get that? It's 3 days, yeah. And we're getting 3 days. You've been at Exeter, you've been at Taunton, you've been at Kelso, you've been at the so-called little tracks. Now, if that has turned people on to racing, and I've always maintained that, people talk about the big days, the Cheltenhams, the Ascots. They are absolutely wonderful. But they sort of look after themselves a little bit. If you can get 100 more people through the gate at Taunton, 100 more people through the gate at Newton Abbot, that's going to filter its way through. And I just hope, and I think, hopefully through what's been such a bad time for everybody, that the real positive thing I see for racing at the moment, we have to really.
Do you think that's recognised within the weighing room? I'm not patting ITV's on the back, but the likes of Sporting Life who are doing this for the exposure they give racing. Do you think people understand just how important racing being in a shop window as regularly as it is compared to other sports is appreciated amongst everyone?
I'm not.
I know you've always got it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because you're in. If you ask me this question at the races, to be honest, all I'm worried about is where my next winners come from. So everything else, you're in this bubble. You're not aware of anything else that's going on. But when you sit down and think about it, it's a phenomenal thing. But there's so many times where racing has an opportunity and completely messes it up. So I hope on this occasion that the powers that be are able to really, they nearly had an opportunity to balls it all up 3 months ago with the ITV are showing all these things, everything's going through, and through TV deals and things. They're given an opportunity to really appreciate stuff, and they can nearly go and mess it all up. I mean, I know it's probably difficult from both sides, but racing does have an extraordinary way of sometimes shooting itself in the foot, for want of a better phrase. And I just hope that maybe the opportunity that they have at the moment, that they're able to grasp and really make the most of it. Because I do think that, yes, in so many ways, you could be worried about certain things, but I think that they've got a massive opportunity at the moment that they have to make the most of, and I just hope they do.
I think you make a very good point. I don't want to make a light of it, but I would just like to make it abundantly clear I've not paid you in any way.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
To say that, because
well,
obviously
actually,
I'm
to be honest,
invested
you're probably the weak link of the organisation.
Thank you. Now I feel a lot better. I do think it's a really important message, but in light of that, and in COVID, ITV I think has really stepped up, and I'm saying that obviously I'm involved in it, but if I was a fan watching it, I'd be aware of that. Do you think that the powers that be and the people around racing, away from the media side of things, have got what it takes moving forward into 2021 to build on what is undoubtedly a lot of success, growing viewing figures, etc.?
I hope so. There's certain things I think have certainly got better on that score recently. Now, I'm involved in jump racing. You love your jump racing. We can't hide from. There's always going to be a welfare issue. I've shown you old books that I've got. In 1950 something, they were complaining about the Grand National. Then, it's always happened. And racing has sometimes, certainly, I found, been on the back foot sometimes. But now I did a campaign last year where there was a jockey, there was a vet, there was TV personality in Alice Plunkett. Obviously they chose her over you, which rightly so.
Rightly so, yeah.
Where suddenly I found that we're doing things on the front foot. We're explaining, to the race goer what is happening, what is going on, why we put the green screens up. Yes, sometimes it's for the wrong reason. It's not for the wrong reasons, but sometimes it's for the obvious, but sometimes it might just be to give somebody a jockey a bit of privacy, a bit of space to get up. A horse may be winded. It doesn't always have to, and it's just explaining things, explaining why we do certain things, and at the end of the day, why everything is is towards the good of the sport, the good of the animal. And it's all about the horses. I think for far too long, we maybe shied away from that and allowed the people that are willing to criticise the sport. And you're not going to win over everybody. There are going to be people, you know, in any walk of life, whether it's, you know, politics, racing, any sport, you know, boxing. You're going to have people that just don't like it, and that's fine. That's your opinion. If that's what you don't want to do, you don't like it. That's absolutely fine. But what we have to do and be on the front foot about is an understanding of this is why we do. This is how we look after animals. This is what we're doing. You know, so then they're not getting figures and mixing them up and able to twist them to the way
and
they
being
want
able to run with it and just
exactly unopposed.
Yeah,
you know, you look at the retraining of the racehorses. You look at so many things that before we were sort of just not publicising them enough and allowing people just to criticise willy-nilly and allowing them to run with it. You know, it's being on the front foot and explaining the sport to people. So I think that's a lot better, and I hope that continues. But I do think the way you're given a deck of cards in life, and it's how you handle them. And I just hope that the opportunity that racing has been given, we were the first sport to get back to any sort of normality. We're not going to get, it's going to be a long time before anybody's back to normality, but we were the first sport to be up and going. But we were the first sport to be up and going because we had things in place. Dr. Jerry Hill did a phenomenal job in going to the last thing the government want to do is what do we have to do in order to allow you racing? We went the other way. This is what we can do. Will you, what can we change? What can we do? Which is a so much better way of doing it than going to the government. We want to race. What do you reckon? We were able to go and say, this is the steps we have taken. This is how we've made a safe environment. This is what we are going to do. Are you happy with it? No, we're not happy with this. That we're happy with this. We need to change that. So we were able to go forward with a plan and actually, then race football, rugby, cricket. They were able to learn from what we've done as well, which was fabulous, and then that actually gives you, belief going forward. The right people are perhaps in charge. But I do think, racing has been given an opportunity again, which we probably lost when foot and mouth came along, because people were allowed to bet on other sports, and they realised they can quite happily bet on other sports. The boot was on the other foot this time. All the other sports weren't. Racing was one of the biggest revenues of betting again, back to maybe near the levels of how it was pre-foot and mouth, and you hope that we can make the most of it. But I do think for all the hard times for everybody, you've got to look at the positiveness, and I think racing has been given an opportunity by the organisations you work for.
And very good ones at that. I've just got a couple of final questions. Slight key change back to your career, but do you set yourself a goal where you go, I want to ride, say, 2,000 winners or whatever it is before I draw stumps, or will you just see how the cards fall?
See how the cards fall. You want to ride as many winners as possible. If I sat down here now, I would like to be in a position where I can have another crack at the championship, whether that's realistic or not. And you need so many things to go in your favour. I'd like to ride a Gold Cup horse again. I'd like to ride a Grand National horse, but I just like to continue to enjoy it, continue to ride as many winners as possible, and the rest will follow. If I'm in a position to do any of those things, you just want to get it right.
And we've talked about a wide range of topics. One thing, and trust me, I'm not implying anything by this question, but one thing that amazes me about jockeys, and I spoke to Harry Cobden earlier, Joe Tizard, is your mindset compared to us measly normal folk as such. How do you, as someone who's taken countless falls, ridden in thousands of races, keep your bottle to make yourself on a cold day go, I'm going to get up, I might have a fall, I'm going to get a slap, and just keep doing it time and time again? How do you maintain that sort of the bravery that you've always displayed?
It's pretty easy when you're very, very stupid.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's probably that. No, seriously.
Has it in any way changed? When when you were a 17-year-old going out and riding whatever horse, you probably
Look,
absolutely
the falls still hurt, but no, it hasn't. If anything, it's more. You spring out of bed when you have horses to look forward to. If you're going through a lean spell and you don't have the horses to look forward to, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, whether you're 17 or 37, you struggle to get out of bed. The other day, I was asked to go and school some nice horses, and I had to get up at 4:30, and it feels like 4:30, absolutely ready to go. It's not a drive. They say living down here, I live in the middle of nowhere. 2.5 hours anywhere. It feels like a 10-minute drive. When you are on a bad trot or something, then it does sometimes feel like a struggle. But I've always said to you before, I'm in a very, very lucky position, and it's something I've never really had to struggle with, thankfully. You just take the positive, look forward to it, and there's still plenty to look forward to.
And finally, I know that you don't feel fulfilled now, but can you just give me my Christmas present that I want this year, which is just to tell me that when you look back and you've retired in whatever year that is, you can look back and you'll see your name right at the top of the winning most jockeys of all time list, which you will be, already are. And can we have a drink and you go, I did all right, Ollie, didn't I? Do you know what I mean? Like, you've done so much. Will you at one stage of your life, do you think, be proud of what you have achieved?
I hope so.
I hope so.
Can't guarantee it. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'll be in the pub waiting for you anyway. Top man.
Cheers, thank you.
The Sporting Life Arkle this year, Tom. A race that you have won with Western Warhorse at 33-1, I think he was. Your dad never won it. Your granddad did. Can you just talk us through your memories of the day you won it?
The day I won it it's etched. It's one I can definitely remember because he'd only had one run over fences before that, round Doncaster, but he was meant to have had 2 runs over fences, and he bolted on the way down to start at Kempton. This horse was an absolute lunatic. He was once the race was on, he was fine, but trying to get on him, he had to have somebody get on him in the pre-parade ring before I got on him. So Michael Hurd had to walk him round. So he'd saddle him up, and he had to walk him round for 20 minutes before the jockey would get on him. And it took 3 people leading him up, of which all 3 of them were, especially the one, Ashley Farrant's about 6'4" and 18 stone. I mean, you had one in front of him to stop him from bolting, 2 lads either side, and David Pipe would just literally run alongside, leg me up, and we just have to go. So he was a fruitcake, but a fruitcake with an awful lot of ability, and it all clicked for him that day. He gave me a great ride. I mean, he was an outsider, and I didn't think for a minute he would win it. But his owner, Roger Brookhouse, was adamant. He really did fancy him, and thank goodness he was right. I thought he might win a handicap. So I think he was rated 127 at the time. We all thought he'd win a handicap somewhere, nice handicap somewhere.
Definitely would have.
But he ended up winning one of the best races of all. So it was a tremendous thrill, and he won it on merit. There was no.
Oh, well, I was going to say, do you think they went hard up front and it sort of fell in a hole?
No fluke about it. He was the best horse on the day. Ruby could ride that. Whether he'd say differently, I don't know. But Champagne Fever. You watch the race again. Champagne Fever didn't make any mistakes. Galloped from beginning to end, and we did him. And I was always going to beat him from the second last. It was a tremendous performance, and
that must be a good feeling when you come in 2 out and you go. Whatever
I did think I'd win a little bit easier than the nose that he eventually did win. But so they didn't go too quick, because when I joined Ruby, Champagne Fever's really battled, and if they'd gone too quick, Champagne Fever wouldn't have had the energy to battle. No, Western Warhorse is the best horse on the day, and I think if you ran it 10 times again, the only way he'd get beat is if I fell off him.
And as a jockey, day 1 of the festival, race 2, race 3. It's on the first day anyway.
Race 2.
Race 2, it is race 2, isn't it? Sky Bet Supreme, Sporting Life Arkle. To get a winner on the board in such a high-profile race so early on in the week, does the rest of the week feel like not a breeze, but the weights off your shoulders?
Yeah, it's a good feeling. It is a good feeling to get one early, but to ride a winner on any day is fabulous. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said that there isn't. There is a spring in your step when you have a winner, especially I suppose. It took me a few years before I rode my first festival winner, and myself and Noel Feely used to change next to each other all the time, and it took us both a few years to break our duck. And when you're sat there watching everyone else have a winner, it does get grating. It's really annoying. So it's a lovely feeling just to be that annoying person that's that winner.
Writing your name on your peg.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a big one for writing my name on the side. I've done it a couple of times, and it is lovely to look at. But at the same time, it's that you are in a better mood. And so for that particular festival, I'm sure I was very annoying to everyone else around, because I was in a lucky position that year to have, I think I had 3 winners that festival, so that was great. And yeah, you don't have a different mindset, but you are certainly a lot easier to be around than the person that's ridden 18 consecutive losers at the festival.
What's the atmosphere like walking back when you've had a 33-1 winner at Cheltenham as opposed to a 6-4 favourite?
Normally, I'd say it's fabulous, and you're really making the most of enjoying. But to be honest, well, Western Warhorse, as soon as I pulled him up, I wanted to get off him really all the way back. I was just hoping he wasn't going to kill anyone from walking back into the winner's enclosure. Martin Pipe tried grabbing him to try and help lead him in. He knocked him over.
Did he?
Yeah. I mean, he was. Yeah, it genuinely. All I wanted to do all the way back. I wasn't soaking it up. I just want to get back into the winner's enclosure and get off him without getting kicked.
You're white as a sheet in the winning photo.
It was, yeah, it wasn't much. Honestly, he was an absolute fruitcake. So, but a very, very talented one.
Didn't your granddad win the Arkle on a horse that had never run over fences?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, a horse called Greektown. He won the Arkle on a horse first time out. It just sounds bananas, doesn't it?
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and won easily.
Did he ever talk to you about that?
Yeah. Greektown was his favourite horse to ride. He won the Grand National on Oxo, the Gold Cup on Linwell, and his stories would go on for hours about those. But if you really wanted to have an afternoon of it listening to about one horse, you just had to mention the words Greektown, and that was his favourite horse.
Why was it so special to him?
Because just the way he jumped. He used to tell me that when he used to go and school him, we'd want to have his breakfast first because he might not have it after that. So
really?
He said he was that exhilarating to ride that he was fractions away from being the best horse to ride or the worst. Grandad got an enormous thrill out of riding Greektown, and he absolutely adored the horse.
But to win an Arkle, having never jumped a fence in public...
Yeah, he's a very good horse.
Would that ever be done now? Would any trainer...
Martin Pipe tried it with Wahiba Sands, I think was the last horse to run.
But that was a while ago, right? Could you ever imagine a trainer doing that?
I think if the opportunity arose, it all depends on the horse or the situation or wherever. Yes, it's very rare. It shows it's very rare, nigh on unique. But if you had a particularly brittle horse to train, or you had a big freeze up, and for argument's sake, if you had a horse that you ran in the Christmas hurdle, maybe it's one pointer pointing or something, ran in the Christmas hurdle, and it doesn't, you're not going to win the champion hurdle with it. It might finish 4th or 5th in the champion hurdle, and you think, well, we'll have to go over fences with it. It'll probably, it'll go well in an Arkle. It'll make a lovely chaser, and say you weren't able to run it over fences, but it's done plenty of schooling. Maybe even taking it to a race course to school. Someone will try it again. There's no reason why not with the right individual.
And I guess your granddad going out would have done so much schooling, knows he's a great jumper, and probably gone, these lads aren't.
Yeah, and you just think, if you thought I was stupid, no, he was definitely the bravest of the Scudamores.
Was he?
Yeah.
And the stupidest?
No. He wasn't stupid.
He was a smart man, wasn't he?
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, it's some race to ride in, though, I imagine.
It is. It's a great thrill, and it's you look through all the horses that have won it, and you're very proud to look through the horses that have won it and see the ones that have come through, whether they go on to win Gold Cups or Queen Mother Champion Chases. It's got such a roll of honour. growing up, seeing the likes of Remittance Man win it. You know, Jamie Osborne seemed to win it most years, and Travado and the likes. Dad never won it, unfortunately. You know, Martin, well, Chief, I remember him winning it. There were just so many good horses to win it. Moscow Flyer, the list goes on and on. And you know, although unfortunately Western Warhorse wasn't able to go on after that, he was very much a worthy winner and a high quality racehorse.